On the night of November 24, 1971, a man boarded a commercial flight in Portland, Oregon. He wore a dark business suit, a black tie, dark sunglasses. He carried a briefcase. He ordered a bourbon and soda. He was polite, quiet, completely unremarkable. And then, somewhere over the dark forests of the Pacific Northwest, he vanished. Not from the passenger list, not from the security footage, from the sky itself. He jumped from a Boeing 727 at 10,000 feet into a freezing rainstorm with $200,000 in cash strapped to his body. And no one, not the FBI, not the CIA, not a single investigator in over 50 years has ever found him. This is the story of D.B. Cooper, the only unsolved skyjacking in American history. Stay with me, because the deeper you go into this case, the stranger it gets. Let's start with what we know for certain. On November 24, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, a man purchased a one-way ticket at Portland International Airport. He used the name Dan Cooper, not D.B. Cooper. That name came later, a misunderstanding between a journalist and a wire service that stuck forever. He paid cash. He boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305, bound for Seattle, Washington, a short 30-minute hop, nothing unusual. The flight had 36 passengers and 6 crew members. He sat in seat 18C, aisle seat, rear of the plane. He ordered his bourbon and soda from a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. And then, just minutes after takeoff, he handed her a note. Florence almost didn't read it. She assumed it was the phone number of a lonely businessman. It happened more than she would have liked. She tucked the note into her pocket. He leaned toward her and said quietly, "Miss, you'd better look at that note." She read it. The note said he had a bomb. Florence later described what happened next with remarkable calm. She sat beside him. He opened his briefcase just enough for her to see inside. Red cylinders, wires, a large battery. Whether the bomb was real has never been confirmed, but Florence believed it, the pilot believed it, and that was enough. Cooper made his demands clearly, almost businesslike. $200,000 in negotiable $20 bills, 4 parachutes, 2 primary, 2 reserve, a fuel truck waiting in Seattle to refuel the aircraft, and no tricks. The pilot, Captain William Scott, contacted air traffic control. The FBI was notified immediately. What followed was one of the most extraordinary negotiations in aviation history. While Flight 305 circled Seattle for 2 hours, the FBI worked frantically on the ground. The $200,000 was assembled, 10,000 unmarked $20 bills. But the FBI was smarter than Cooper gave them credit for. Every single bill was photographed, every serial number recorded, a ransom that could be traced to any bank, any store, any transaction in America. The parachutes were gathered, 2 military parachutes and 2 civilian sport parachutes. One of the civilian chutes, investigators would later notice, had been sewn shut, unusable. Whether this was deliberate sabotage or simple error, no one knows. Cooper never tried to use that one. At 5:24 p.m., Flight 305 landed in Seattle. Cooper allowed all 36 passengers to deplane. He released 2 of the flight attendants. He kept Captain Scott, co-pilot First Officer Ratazachak, flight engineer H.E. Anderson, and 1 flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, on board. The money and parachutes were delivered to the aircraft. Cooper counted the bills. He examined the parachutes. He gave his next set of instructions. Fly to Mexico City. Altitude no higher than 10,000 feet. Speed as slow as the aircraft could safely fly. Landing gear remain deployed. These were the instructions of someone who knew aircraft, someone who understood the limits of a Boeing 727. The crew complied. At 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 departed Seattle, and D.B. Cooper began the final act of his plan. What happened next was reconstructed from the crew's accounts, radar data, and physical evidence.
Somewhere over the Cascade Mountains of Washington State, Cooper lowered the rear stairs of the Boeing 727. This is a detail that matters enormously. The Boeing 727 was one of the only commercial aircraft of that era with aft stairs, a door at the back of the plane that opened downward into a staircase, accessible in flight. Cooper had specifically chosen this aircraft. He knew exactly what he was doing. He tied the money bag to himself. He strapped on one of the parachutes. At approximately 8:13 p.m., the crew felt a pressure change. At 8:24 p.m., the aft stairs deployed. And D.B. Cooper stepped into the darkness. Into a freezing rainstorm. Into winds of 150 miles per hour. Into a temperature of -7 degrees Celsius. Into the black forests of the Pacific Northwest, and was never seen again. The aircraft landed safely in Reno, Nevada, the planned refueling stop. FBI agents boarded immediately. Cooper was gone. Left behind, his clip-on black tie, 8 cigarette butts, 2 of the 4 parachutes, and instructions he had written on a notepad, torn away and taken with him. The FBI launched the largest investigation in its history to that point. Hundreds of agents, military searches of the forest below, divers in rivers, aircraft surveys. Nothing. For 8 years, nothing.
Then, in February 1980, something happened that reignited the entire case. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was on a picnic with his family along the banks of the Columbia River, about 40 miles northwest of Vancouver, Washington. He was digging in the sand near the riverbank. His fingers touched something. He pulled out 3 bundles of rotting, disintegrating $20 bills. $5,800 total, still bound in the original FBI rubber bands. The serial numbers matched. They were Cooper's money. The discovery was extraordinary and deeply confusing, because the money was found in the wrong place. FBI analysts had calculated Cooper's jump zone based on the aircraft's speed, altitude, and direction of flight. That zone was near Ariel, Washington, more than 20 miles from where the money was found. How did it get to the Columbia River? The bills were partially buried, waterlogged, and deteriorated in a specific pattern suggesting they had been there for years. But how they traveled from the jump zone, if they did, has never been explained. No other bills have ever been found. The remaining $194,200, if it still exists somewhere, has never surfaced in any bank or business transaction in 50 years. Not one bill. Either Cooper buried or destroyed the rest of the money, or Cooper died in that forest, and the money deteriorated or was carried away by the river system over decades, or there is an explanation no one has yet considered.
Over 50 years, the FBI investigated over 1,000 suspects. The file was officially closed in 2016, not because the case was solved, but because the Bureau said it needed to redirect resources. But here are the suspects who came closest. Just 4 months after Cooper's jump, in April 1972, a man named Richard McCoy hijacked a United Airlines flight in almost identical fashion. Same demands, same method, same aircraft type. He even used a rear staircase jump. He was caught 2 days later with the ransom money. McCoy was a Vietnam veteran, a skydiver, and a Sunday school teacher. He had detailed knowledge of aviation. The FBI strongly suspected McCoy was Cooper. But McCoy had an alibi for November 24, 1971. Witnesses placed him at a Thanksgiving party in Utah. His wife maintained his innocence until his death. McCoy was killed in a shootout with FBI agents in 1974 while attempting to escape custody. He never confessed. In 2011, a woman named Marla Cooper came forward with an extraordinary story. She claimed her uncle, L.D. Cooper, had confessed to being D.B. Cooper on his deathbed. She provided DNA samples, an old guitar strap she said her uncle owned around the time of the hijacking. The FBI tested the DNA against genetic material recovered from the clip-on tie left on the aircraft. The results were inconclusive. L.D. Cooper died in 1999. For many investigators, Robert Rackstraw remains the most compelling suspect. Rackstraw was a former Army paratrooper, a trained skydiver, a con artist, forger, and career criminal with multiple convictions. He had parachute experience. He had military training. He was in the Pacific Northwest in November 1971. A private investigation team claimed in 2016 that they had decoded secret messages in Cooper's ransom note, messages that pointed directly to Rackstraw. The FBI reviewed their analysis and declined to reopen the case. Rackstraw died in 2019. He repeatedly teased that he knew who Cooper was, but never confessed. Not definitively. Perhaps the most haunting theory of all is the simplest. Cooper was nobody. A frustrated ordinary man, a drifter, someone with just enough knowledge of aviation and skydiving to attempt the impossible. Someone who jumped and died in those dark forests, and whose bones lie somewhere in the Cascade Mountains, undiscovered, with $194,000 rotting beside them.
The D.B. Cooper case is unique in American crime history for what it left behind and what it didn't. What we know: Cooper had at least basic knowledge of aviation. He knew the Boeing 727 specifically. He knew about the aft staircase. He knew how to request a flight path that favored a parachute jump. He was calm, controlled, described by every crew member as polite, even considerate. He ordered his bourbon. He lit his cigarettes. He did not threaten the crew unnecessarily. He let the passengers go. What we don't know: did he survive the jump? FBI investigators and military survival experts have consistently said the jump was survivable, barely. The conditions were brutal, but not impossible for an experienced parachutist. But no body was ever found. No parachute, no equipment, no bones. Did he spend the money? Not a single bill, beyond Brian Ingram's discovery, has ever appeared. Was he trained? His knowledge of aviation suggests military or aviation industry experience, but no one matching his description was ever positively identified in military or airline employee records. And most mysteriously of all, why did he do it? He asked for $200,000, in 1971 terms, a significant sum, but not the demand of someone planning the crime of the century. It was specific, targeted, almost modest. Some investigators believe the amount suggests a personal motivation, a debt, a score to settle, a specific need for exactly that amount. We will probably never know.
D.B. Cooper changed aviation forever. Within months of the hijacking, the FAA mandated that all Boeing 727s be fitted with a device that prevented the aft stairs from being deployed in flight. It became known, informally, as the Cooper vein. Airports introduced metal detectors for the first time on a widespread basis. The era of casual, open-air travel, where you could walk to the gate without screening, ended with D.B. Cooper. But beyond the policy changes, Cooper left something stranger in the culture. He became a legend. Books, films, songs, documentaries, t-shirts. He became, in the American imagination, a kind of folk hero, the everyman who stuck it to the system and got away clean. Whether he deserved that romanticization is another matter. He terrified a flight crew. He endangered an aircraft. He could have killed people. But he didn't. And somehow, in the mythology that grew up around him, that mattered.
Every case file tells a story, but not the one you've heard before. Behind every headline, there are details they never printed.
D.B. Cooper, whoever he was, bought a plane ticket, drank his bourbon, made his demands, and then stepped into a freezing black sky and kept walking. The FBI's official position is that he did not survive, but there is no body, there is no parachute, there is no grave. Somewhere in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, or in a quiet town under a different name, or in the ground of a country no one ever checked. The answer is waiting. If this case fascinated you, subscribe to Dark Vault Production, because next week, we open another file.